Eden Park, the All Blacks turned on one of their best home performances for many years in beating the Springboks by a 20-point margin. But tonight here in Wellington, it starts all over again as the two sides come together for Game 2 of the 2010 Tri-Nations. The history of games between these two great rugby powers would suggest the Springboks will bounce back tonight in less than ideal conditions. And what will be going through the minds of these boys?
This is a story about home. Where's your home? Who's your team? I've only ever had one team, the New Zealand All Blacks. I think my earliest memory is of watching the All Blacks play. My dad taught me how to do the Haka when I was 2 years old. This is a story about my team. This is a story about a World Cup. It's a story about a nation's obsession. It's a story about my obsession. New Zealand has the most successful rugby team in history. Over 100 years, their winning record is close to 75%. In the last 15 years, it's been even better, around 85%.
Rugby is the foundation game of our society. Rugby is the game that we all learn when we're very young.
I see a lot of kids around the place, playing rugby, wanting to be All Blacks, and I can see myself in those kids. That's all I wanted to do, was play for the All Blacks.
All communities are identified with their champions, with their heroes. It's just a very powerful, ancient psychological connection that the midbrain makes, that these people fight for us.
If you want to know why I'm obsessed with the All Blacks, you don't have to look much further than my dad.
What I want to emulate, absolute professionalism, 190% commitment every time. Never take prisoners, don't take no for an answer, just punch up the guts, let them know who's boss. Just absolute domination with world-class skill, expertise, elan, flair. They've got the whole package. There are 15 living Buddhas on the field, man. That's it. I don't need a religion. My passion, my cosmic inspiration comes from the All Blacks.
If you don't know the sport of rugby, it's actually pretty simple. There are two teams of 15 men fighting for possession of an oval ball. Now, to score points, you just have to get the ball across the opposition goal line, a bit like an American football touchdown, without throwing the ball forward.
Even people who don't particularly follow rugby will watch the All Blacks. We'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch them play Wales.
Come on, lads.
Women in their 50s who've got absolutely no connection whatsoever to sport, but they know who Dan Carter and Richie McCaw is, and they know what the score is from the weekend, because it's everywhere here in New Zealand.
I just wanted to say briefly first how wonderful that match was.
Did it give you a boost?
Oh, yes, I'll say.
I've got a feeling Waikato University did a study on whether the economy did better if the All Blacks were winning and found no correlation. But I think actually it does lift the nation. A lot of what happens in the economy is confidence. So if the country's winning at sport, that helps the economy.
We are 62 million people, and 62 million people don't like rugby. But in New Zealand, you are 4 million people, and we know that 4 million people support All Blacks team.
My favourite player is Daniel Carter because he's hot and a good player.
There's Dan Carter.
Shopkeeper just told us that they're going to be here and all of them, and we were just so excited, almost screaming and just shaking.
What did Dan say to you?
Hello.
My wife would say Dan Carter, but I think there's a lot in leadership, and in my mind the All Blacks play best when Richie's captaining them.
Jerry's the man. I love his hard-ass, take-no-prisoner attitude. He's like a coiled cobra. Give me the fucking ball out of my way, whoom, whack, and under the ball, and Jerry's just like, whoom.
In 2011, the World Cup tournament is being held in New Zealand. It doesn't get any bigger than that.
It's the largest sporting event New Zealand will have ever hosted. We think broadly 70,000 people coming down here for the event, but probably about 1 billion people watching it plus. It's the third largest sporting event in the world behind the Olympics and FIFA World Cup soccer.
I imagine in 2011, nobody in New Zealand can imagine All Blacks will lose the World Cup. I imagine that. So imagine the pressure.
This guy doesn't know the half of it. There's a lot of pressure when you've gone into every World Cup tournament as the favourite, but haven't won it in 24 years. This is John Kirwan, my childhood hero. He played almost 100 games for the All Blacks.
I just think it'd be good to get this monkey off our back, and then we probably don't have to win another World Cup for another 10 years or 12 years.
The thing with Kiwis is we all remember, it's a bit like when Princess Diana died. You remember exactly where you were when the All Blacks won the World Cup in '87.
1987, it was a great time to be a New Zealander, and it was a pretty great time to be me. The All Blacks were the world champions, and we were all together back then, the four of us. That's my sister Rewa. She's studying to be a surgeon now.
The reason that we love New Zealand so much and idolise it is because when we were there, our lives were kind of perfect. We had a beautiful home, we had a beautiful family. Everything was happy back then. I mean, it really was this like golden childhood. I can't remember anything bad ever happening there. Obviously, Mum and Dad both love rugby, but Dad, I remember when I was in primary school and he told me that he was an All Black, and I told all my friends at school, which was embarrassing because one of the girls in my class, Dad, was an All Black. She's like, oh, my dad's an All Black too, I'll see if they know each other.
When I look back on that time in New Zealand, it feels like paradise, you know? But the thing about paradise is that it doesn't last forever, does it? When I was 9 years old, my family and I moved to Australia, and that was when everything started to go downhill. By the time the All Blacks were losing the World Cup in 1999, I was losing my family.
I know, Dad. I thought it'd be one day. No fighting.
My dad changed. He wasn't my hero anymore. He was lost. And then it seemed that my dad was just always travelling after that.
The obsession
Go wide!
really started for me in my last year of high school, which is when Mum and Dad broke up.
Oh, yes! Go!
Black is the only tone or colour that absorbs all the energy of the other colours and doesn't reflect any. We are all able to project all our dreams onto this, and they just get absorbed.
The power and passion that the people of New Zealand have for this game is unbelievable. You know, we win, people feel important and they feel larger than life and they feel big and powerful. If we lose, then the country goes into mourning.
The All Black record, which is the most successful international sporting team in the world over 100 years, is because of that expectation and that feeling from the public that the All Blacks should win every test match. So I think it helps. Okay, it adds pressure to what you're doing, and sometimes we feel that pressure.
Okay, so let me take you back to where this story began for me. It was 2007. I'd been living in Sydney the majority of my life now. My mum had made a great home for me. You know, I'd even become an Australian citizen. But it's like there was something just screaming out to me. It was like the siren call of the place that I'd come from. I just felt like I needed to go home. I took my camera with me because I thought I was going to be making a film about my heroes, the All Blacks. But there was a lot more to it than that, as it turned out. I guess I was trying to figure out, am I the only one who sees the All Blacks in this light? I needed to meet other people and find out why they loved the team so much. Everywhere I went, there were people just as obsessed as I was. There was Alison, a hairdresser from South Auckland.
Every customer that comes in here, it's always about the rugby.
And Stu, a schoolboy prodigy.
His dream has always been to wear the black jersey.
Getting knocked around on the field as a little white boy is not too easy, but hopefully by next season I'll be a medium white boy, so I'll be able to hold my own out there.
After years of being all over this map, my dad was finally back in New Zealand as well. He was living there with his new wife and his stepchildren. I hadn't actually spent any real time with my dad since our family broke up. Just 3 days after I arrived, the All Blacks were playing their first game of the season.
Fuck.
It was pretty hard to talk about what had happened to our family and our home, but it was very easy to talk about our team.
When the All Blacks win the World Cup this year, it will be like the culmination of a lifetime of commitment. I was around for the 87 win, but it'll just be that touch of perfection that my life needs. I have a really strong bond with a physical New Zealand, and the All Blacks are part of that. I grew up with the sand between my feet, you know, eating crayfish heads, sleeping in the sandhills, all that stuff.
One day I surprised my dad and I took him to an All Blacks training session.
My son taking me to the All Blacks and you're an accredited photojournalist, that was just literally one of the best moments of my life. Rather than, oh wow, this is the All Blacks, it was like all my senses were heightened. You know what it was like? They were all telepathically linked.
How did we get to this point of seeing athletes as superhuman? Maybe it's got something to do with the way the team is marketed. Since I was a little kid, I've been looking at images just like this one. I thought I'd go and talk to the marketing guru, the guy who played such an important role in the game becoming professional.
When I was involved in the board of New Zealand, we decided that the game was going to go pro, and the only way to fund that was through becoming commercially astute. Let's look at your Indigenous people and what was important to them.
The way that the All Blacks use Maori culture within the promotion of their team and their brand, it's very authentic. Looks as though there's a lot of effort that goes behind it to make sure that it is done correctly, which as a people is all you can ask for something that's been shown across the world, that you do want it to be real.
In a 2006 ad campaign by Adidas, the blood of All Blacks players was mixed in with the ink used to print the posters. It seemed a little excessive, but I still went out and got one. Blood, flesh, warriors. It's not the mythological terrain of your average sports team. And I was starting to wonder if it might all be a way of reconciling modern New Zealand with the country's bloody origins.
In Māoridom, there's a saying, me te tiro whakamuri kia anga whakamua, and that means you have to look back in order to look forward.
Over 700 years ago, Polynesians discovered Aotearoa, creating a Maori culture. Europeans turned up in 1642. Typical white guys, they wanted to own everything they saw. The problem was their indigenous opponents were battle-hardened from hundreds of years of tribal conflict. The Maori people repulsed British invasion through the land wars of the 19th century. The Treaty of Waitangi promised to preserve some of their land rights, but it wouldn't be meaningfully acknowledged until the late 20th century. In recent times, some of the biggest breakthroughs have happened. In 1987, Maori became an official language. In 2004, a Maori political party was formed and Maori television went to air.
15% of our population is Maori. It's a big part of our culture. We haven't had a Maori Prime Minister yet, but it's the emphasis on the word yet because it's coming and it'll be a good thing.
Today, the Maori language is taught to all New Zealand school children.
It's portrayed internationally that Maori are on equal pegging with Pākehā here in New Zealand. Domestically, that's what we're striving towards, but no, we're not there yet.
Things aren't perfect in New Zealand. Race relations are just hard. There's anger, there's violence. Everyone has their own story. But I'm grateful that in New Zealand we share those stories. I'm proud of the fact that a dialogue even exists. And on a day-to-day level, I can't think of anything that's helped that dialogue more than the changing face of the All Blacks.
That silver fern is like New Zealand, and the Black Sea is the midnight sea on the dark side of the world. The fronds of the fern and the black and the white intertwining on either side. That means something. Race relations in this country are successful, not like they are in Australia or England or South Africa. It's what we do, we play together.
When you are watching the Haka, you are very impressed, a bit afraid too. Because we know the sense of the Haka song. They go to war, they go to kill you.
It's a great way of scaring the bejeevers out of the opposition.
The Haka is symbolic of what the All Blacks are, and I think as a society here in New Zealand, what we would like to be. When Richie McCaw, who is Pākehā, a white New Zealander, led the Haka, I thought that was amazing. When Tana Umanga was captain, a Samoan, when he led the Haka, that was amazing. The passion and the vigour that they showed when leading it showed that the Haka meant as much to them as it did to me, as it did to my grandfather or any other Maori or any other New Zealander here in this country.
For 100 years, the All Blacks performed the Haka kamate, originating from the Ngāti Toa tribe. But in 2005, under coach Graham Henry, the team decided that they needed a new Haka, one to represent the multiracialism in their team and in their country.
It sort of brings us together, starting off from the ground, grabbing our roots and the people that have been buried under the ground and bringing them with us and helping us along.
I guess it shows when the guys go out there and perform it, exactly what it means.
My dad and I had been making up for a lot of lost time. But then I found out that it was going to be coming to an end. He phoned my sister to tell her the news.
Hi, Dad. How did you know it's me, Teddy? You're psychic. Have you decided, are you going to be an obstetrician and gynecologist, or you only see your patients for 9 months? You don't have some boring old fart on your casebook for 15 years, getting ever worsening hemorrhoids. Well, word travels fast. Who told you I was going to Dubai tomorrow? I've been backwards and forwards to the Middle East and all that. So this is a permanent relocation tomorrow. The most important thing that I'm taking to the Middle East is this. I will shower in it every morning and then stand outside in the 40-degree heat so it'll be dry before I go to work. But that's it, man. That's the sacred robe. I'd like to think I'm a business All Black. I've got skills that can be marketed elsewhere, and I'm almost like a Chris Marceau. I like to think I'm a loose forward, can run with the backs and grunt it with the forwards. In roughly 3 months, my wife and my stepdaughter will join me there, so we'll be permanently established as a new family. I'm glad to be leaving New Zealand, not because I don't love Aotearoa, but it's bad for me to spend too long here. I'm getting too soft. If Jerry Collins took 6 months off, man, he would lose it. I can only feel like an All Black when I'm out there knocking the world over. I've just got to get on my way.
I just knew that it would be years before I'd see my dad again. And it was. Look, there wasn't much time to dwell on my dad leaving. I was just getting swept up in the frenzy of the 2007 Rugby World Cup, which was now only a few weeks away. I thought I'd go and see how my fellow rugby tragics were travelling, so I paid a visit to Alison in South Auckland.
I used to finish doing my clients and then nip out the back, get my shoulder pads on, tape up my legs, get dressed in the gear and then finish my client in my rugby gear and then shoot off to the game. It's that adrenaline rush you get when you're on that field. Your blood's pumping. My husband taught me how to tackle and I taught my sister, and did you know she stopped a guy from mugging her? He was like, "Oi, hi," she's like, "No." She grabbed him, she tackled him using the tackling technique and she got her bag back, you know, from behind and just...
On my way to meet Stu McVinney, I was reminded of the words of Gregor Paul.
Travel across New Zealand on a Saturday morning and the talent on display is phenomenal. In every town and city there are hundreds, if not thousands of schoolboys with genuine hopes of becoming All Blacks. Every winter some of those hopes cease to be genuine, but for every kid who doesn't develop the way he once threatened to, there is another who surprises.
To become an All Black, I have to put a lot of work in, because you see these guys, they're machines, and it all comes from hard work.
When he gets that far, he will just be so modest like he is now. I said to him, you know, how would you feel? How would you be able to cope with the cameras and the microphones in your face all the time? I said, how do you think you could cope with this like Dan is? And he said, I guess you just have to, Mum, you know, it's part of it. Looking at Dan, I think he's quite a shy person, but he seems to cope with it.
Pretty weird and intimidating at first, but it's just something that I've got used to and it's just part of the job, really.
Is this your dream?
Yeah, since I was a young fella, so living the dream, it's awesome.
In 2007, it was like you were watching a movie play out, and the All Blacks were playing the roles of national saviours that the public had thrust upon them. They pretty much played the roles perfectly, just like movie stars. But sometimes the players would let me look behind their armour.
The public has such high expectation of New Zealand to win every weekend. You know, there's no second place for us, so that's just life in New Zealand.
Does it ever seem a bit overblown, the obsession with the All Blacks?
Does it ever? Is that euphemistically putting it?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I haven't really done much and I've been praised and riding the wave a little bit, and then there's times where you feel like you haven't done much wrong and you're sort of at the bottom of the heap and everyone's sort of kicking you while you're down. There's no point reading
only the good stuff. You're going to read the good stuff, you've got to read the bad stuff as well, and sometimes that's kind of unpalatable. So I just put like a moratorium on it. I'm not going to read it, because if in the end, if they're not bagging you, they're bagging your mates, and you just get all agitated.
It's either the best thing ever or we're in all sorts of trouble, I guess, when it's not going so good. They just want it to be better. I guess if you say that's been obsessed, well, that's sort of what it is.
The more time I spent with the All Blacks, the more I realised that the public's expectation might become their biggest obstacle. I think that in 2007, the most valued member of the All Blacks coaching staff was maybe the mental skills coach.
We're strong on saying that I have these skills, I have this talent, and on any given day I'm going to go out there and do my best in that way. It's what I do, but who I am and what defines me as an individual comes from another dimension. And as long as you keep that perspective and balance, then people will cope, individuals will cope, and the nation will cope.
He really encourages you, to express yourself. When you're out there on the field, enjoy what you're doing, show why you should be there, and off the field, just be yourself. And if you do that, then you have good balance and enjoying what you're doing.
In 1987, the All Blacks didn't need a mental skills coach, but that was a different time. The longer New Zealand goes without the World Cup, the more the original winners seem to shine.
A lot of the first memory is, of course, of the opening ceremony. People gloss over that. It was a bloody tin pot thing.
Things were literally thrown together in the last, weeks and even days before the tournament kicked off in New Zealand.
The World Cup for us was new, and we didn't probably realise how important it was going to be.
No one would have predicted that a string of defeats would transform a mere sporting tournament into a national hex. In 1991, the All Blacks lost to eventual champions Australia in the semi-finals. Nothing plunges New Zealanders, myself included, into deeper introspection than losing to Big Brother Australia.
We were probably a team starting to be in decline. On the day, we probably tried as hard as we could, but had we got our preparation right, the best we could be? Probably not.
New Zealanders are essentially, in my view anyway, pessimistic people, whereas Australians are essentially optimistic people. It goes back to the way that the two countries were colonised. New Zealand, they were very careful about being successful, becoming middle class. Australia was basically colonised by convicts, by gold miners, and they had to be optimistic to make it go in Australia. So you get cleaned out, they'll come back next week and think they can win again. If the All Blacks lose, there's a sort of a deep pessimism there and think we'll never win again.
It's all the national anthems. Advance Australia Fair, God defend New Zealand. Australians celebrate winners. New Zealand, if you win, they're like, yeah, well done, mate, don't get too big for your boots. Then they'll find the loser and they'll spend the afternoon kicking the loser.
Everyone spoke about 95 and how important the World Cup winning was for us as a country. Didn't realise what impact it had not only on the rugby in our country, but in the country as a whole.
In the history of the sport, there's only one game where I didn't mind the All Blacks losing. It was that one.
Nelson Mandela embraced rugby as a national sport. South Africa is a complicated place. We've got a difficult background. We've got a socio-political landscape that's unlike any other in the world. We're always looking for hooks and handles to put ourselves in a better position on a world stage. For us, a World Cup win in '95 meant absolutely everything. You can see what it meant to guys who were calling themselves the Rainbow Nation.
In 1999, the All Blacks World Cup campaign ended in disaster against France. It was the semi-finals.
The expectation there was that the All Blacks were going to win the World Cup that year as well.
I always wanted to meet the coach, John Hart. I just wanted to tell him that it's okay.
99 was purely a case of the All Blacks maybe being more complacent, a little complacent.
Lost to France in the semi-finals.
Well ahead at half-time, well ahead just after half-time.
Jonah Lomu scored straight after half-time and it looked like one-way ticket, and then all of a sudden...
A French team that came out and just played a brilliant 30 minutes of rugby.
The reality was the momentum that the All Blacks had in that whole tournament, running over England and dominating against all the teams they played against. Everyone would have put their money on the fact that Jonah Lomu was going to score the winning try and they were going to win the World Cup.
As the coach, within 5 minutes or 3 minutes of the whistle, you've got to go in front of the media.
Everyone had an opinion on whose fault it was.
Maybe in a way we had to go through that as a country to understand it. I think a lot of people would have been pretty saddened by what they saw.
You hear stories like, people abusing John Hart.
I got spat on and abused. My horse, it was a favourite in New Zealand Cup, got beer cans thrown at him.
It's embarrassing. You've got to be able to take losses on the chin.
In 2003, it was just like 1991 all over again. The All Blacks lost to Australia in the semi-finals.
Just devastating. I was walking around Darling Harbour and there were huge Polynesian guys and Maori guys bawling their eyes out.
We saw people, failing to keep their chin up as a whole bunch of Australians made sheep noises at us.
It sort of brings about this huge upheaval every time. There's always a coach gets fired, there's a new coach, there's a new team, everyone's performance gets analysed.
Sometimes you need to respect the fact that the opposition might just be better than you. And that's what New Zealanders never, ever, ever accept. They want to find something within themselves that they should blame.
Talkback radio. It's, it's a phenomenon that's growing in this country. What does it create? It creates negativity.
Even though there was no rugby being played in November and December, it still was the number one topic, exactly what we'd done wrong. We lost our ability to have any insight into what the game really means.
We are a rugby nation, and anybody who doubts that should listen to Talkback.
This is Sports Talk.
Well, the post-mortems have begun for the All Blacks over what went wrong in their failed attempt.
I just don't think we can win it under Henry.
So where did the All Blacks go wrong? Should heads not roll?
Skills don't necessarily come.
So here we were in 2007, and the weight of history had become like an albatross around the necks of the All Blacks.
We've just got to redeem ourselves now.
If they win, I'll be so elated. I'll almost relax a bit. It'll sort of remove a cloud of anxiety about everything.
My dad Skyped me a lot from the Middle East.
And there seems to be just a calmness, a commitment, an invincibility. It's etched and burned into the souls. They will take no prisoners. The All Blacks will go down fucking dying before they lose.
Could we please just get to France and start playing it so that we can win this bloody thing? That was the sort of mood that I started hearing and started worrying. We've got people thinking that it's a done deal already.
Everything appears to be on track for the All Blacks. Their opening 4 games are one-sided wipeouts. But then, with the knockout quarterfinal looming, New Zealand's worst fear came true.
This is a situation of such national concern that ministers of some Catholic and Anglican churches are planning to dedicate a special prayer to Carter.
God has willed that he would be right at this time.
The day before the World Cup quarterfinal, there's a feeling of absolute tranquility that I've never felt before in New Zealand.
We would all think that the All Blacks
Blacks are going to win by 20 to 30 points, such as the feathery disposition of our poor French friend. I wake bolt upright in the middle of the night, sweating everywhere, with all these angry talkback callers in my ear. I dreamt we actually lost it on Sunday morning.
Playing France, I think the All Blacks should win, but they seem to be wound up.
As often said in All Black teams, they're motivated by fear of losing.
Can you imagine being an All Black player knowing that if you don't win it, there's going to be such a backlash?
The last 4 years have been heading to this one point in time.
New Zealand would play Dan Carter that day, but he'd be wearing grey like his teammates, their all-black jersey deemed too close to the navy blue of France.
When they scored their first try, I felt, here they come.
The charge now. Yes!
My heart was just going.
Terrific work from them. New Zealand 13, France 3.
I knew at half-time when I saw Dan Carter limp off, I just thought, oh, here we go.
What's he going to give? It must be a yellow card, I fancy.
By halfway through the second half, I was certain that it was going to go the wrong way.
But the cheers go up. France have breached New Zealand's defence.
Mentally, something had switched over in the All Blacks.
Come on, guys, you've just got to pull finger and do anything, absolutely anything. The clock ticks down and...
It's too late.
We lost it again.
There's a lot of people being affected by this. Families, wives, partners, kids who are devastated. We will be scarred for the rest of our lives, and I mean that. Part of our dignity and part of our composure and part of our ability to live on the world stage and be respected is to make sure that we don't bitch and moan. I don't think this country would be respected for it. I think the Prime Minister has said that. You know, there's no guarantees in this world that you're always going to win. It's just that we win more than others. You know, I think they're marvellous role models for this country. They put this country on the map right around the world. I also think they've achieved something which is very special. You know, they've united a group of people. Like the All Blacks are made up of Maori, Samoan, Tongan, Fijian, European. They understand each other's cultures, and that doesn't just happen. That's worked on very well, and respect each other, and have become a team of brothers who are very tight. And for the different cultures to work so strongly together, I think is something that's been marvellous in this team, and I think it reflects what New Zealand can do as a nation. And I'm hoping that has some rub-off.
Right. Better spend some time with the kids.
I didn't sleep. I was so devastated.
I was really gutted, actually, more so than I thought I would be. I was genuinely quite upset.
It's like someone's died.
The tears and disbelief, and then the 7 stages of grieving. There's the denial, then the trying to rationalise it, then anger.
I think that my dad found it too hard to phone me, but a couple of days later, he sent me an email. It started, "Dear Julian, at a level, I'm over the obsession and don't feel the gutted, suicidal wreck that I was 4 years ago when the All Blacks were eliminated. I'm now immersed in a more international environment. I have definitely moved beyond the obsessive, seething myopia that living in an isolated country can cause. Not only about rugby, but about many life dimensions. As I write this, I realise that the death of the All Blacks coincides with the true rebirthing of Rod."
We have to remember that there's 15 guys on that field with 4 million people on top of them.
Expecting them to live not just their lives, but ours for us on the sporting field. Those failed dreams that we might have had.
Hardly anyone talks about the rugby, and the only ones that do talk about rugby are the ones that don't get into rugby because they said, "Thank goodness for that, we're sick of hearing about the rugby." I know they get paid big money in that, but still got a feel for them. When the All Blacks arrived in, they just wanted their families, you could tell.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be with people that love them regardless of whether they're All Blacks or whatever.
The All Blacks fans that I knew were coping in any way that they could, sometimes by radical means. Alison had entered her family into a salsa dancing competition. My dad and I couldn't talk about the All Blacks anymore, so we just didn't talk at all.
Went to make a tackle, next thing you know, some guy connected with the side of my leg. I just remember rolling around in pain.
They hit us with a bombshell. Op time and 6 months out. Trials coming, and he knew he wasn't going to be able to go to them. He said to me, "Oh well, that's that, isn't it? It's gone." He probably handled it better than I did, actually.
I'm going to go to university and try to get a degree sort of thing, so I can have some backup.
After the World Cup, we packed up and moved to the Gold Coast, Queensland. You take for granted, like, I wouldn't mind my child learning a little bit of Aborigine, because it's, you know, but there was not any of that in the school. In New Zealand, we can sort of divide ourselves up, but when you're in Australia, there's no you're this and you're that. We're just Kiwis and we're all one. And I just sort of wished when I came home that we could bring that same thing back home, that we're all one back home. People who have been overseas, they know what I'm talking about.
Rowena Jane Shaw.
I did graduate med school and I became a doctor, and suddenly my life was just crazy and working 80 hours a week. And it's not that I don't want to watch rugby or anything, I still follow it, but I guess I've lost that obsession. You know, when Mum and Dad split up, I moved out of home, you were with Mum, and then Dad's, you know, been overseas working. Maybe in a weird way we made that such a big part in our lives so we could keep Dad in our lives, trying to claw back to how it was in the good old days. The thing that's changed is now, deep down, I just think it's going to be okay. And I didn't have that feeling before.
That feeling my sister's talking about, I didn't know what it was. I think I was trying to figure out who I was and put together all these broken pieces from my past. The resolution was never going to be the All Blacks winning the World Cup, though. I'd have to get to that place on my own. My dad had been commuting between the Middle East and South Africa for work, but now he was visiting his wife in Cape Town. Every time I watched the All Blacks play, I would just burst into tears. I didn't know why. It was every time I saw the Haka, I would start crying uncontrollably. And so I went back to New Zealand where the All Blacks were, but really I think I was going back to New Zealand where you were. It was something screaming out to me saying that I miss having you in my life.
Well, I mean, that's you've actually never quite put it this way. You know,
I wanted to tell you this, you know. I've actually gone all over the world. I've been in and out of camp with the All Blacks, and I even sat down with the Prime Minister of New Zealand. But everything has led back to you.
Jeez.
You know,
but please, I mean,
I feel like when you first kind of disappeared from my life after that breakup, that was when I became an incredibly hardcore All Black fan.
You know, it was very hard those first few years, and I travelled a lot. You know, I was the absent father and missed birthdays and things, which hurt. And you were turning into a man, and it was very hard.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I lived through it. You know, you and I was looking after you there for a while. I mean, that was a terrible. You know, that was a. You know, breakups are always really tough on kids, regardless. So I really felt I had done you something terrible. But the thing is that I worked out 40 years ago, I'm actually an internationalist, really. I don't belong to a country, I don't belong to anybody, I belong to myself. And that's where we're extremely similar. And although
But what do you sort of see for us in the future? Because I just don't really know anymore how it's going to play out. It's so hard to predict. Do you ever worry that we've been heading into some kind of estrangement by you being on the other side of the world?
I did worry. I thought, geez, you know, maybe Julian will grow away and he'll just, the old man's not here. But you hopped off the plane and we were just, mate, and we just picked up where we left off. So I think we're welded together for life. There's no fear now about, you know, any sort of intrusion or separation. And the grandchildren will be sitting on my knee, you know, no doubt about it.
In an All Blacks outfit?
Absolutely. I've got to hug my son. Oh, mate. I love you, boy.
Am I over my obsession with the All Blacks? Well, no. Because I don't want to be. I just like to think that my love has matured. And I don't think I'm the only one. I think the way that the country loves the team has changed forever.
We sort of feel we can't always rely on them to win, which is fair enough because they're only human, they're not super machines. I always support the All Blacks, but there's far more to life than just rugby. I did that bridging course through Auckland University, and next year I start my law degree, first year.
Soccer's actually starting to take off a bit over here. They're getting some exposure, which it's unheard of over here. Even some of my mates, they'll go to the pub, watch the soccer game, which I've never done that before, right? Yeah, I don't think soccer's my game.
I've had this theory that maybe, the love of the All Blacks, it's going from a conditional love to an unconditional love. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, well, that'd be nice. I actually do think New Zealand's matured. Travelling around the country, you always get those people that just absolutely love it, no matter whether you're going good or not. They want to be there to support, and that's what I keep reminding myself when I hear things aren't going so well or whatever. Everyone's getting excited about the tournament that's coming in. They've really gotten behind the team. It's a pretty good feeling there at the moment, and I'm sure the excitement's going to get more and more. Nothing's guaranteed, but a few of us have been around for a while, and we've got to be confident that we've learnt some lessons from last time.
I think you just got to look at all the what-ifs and try and make sure that you cover those. What if we're down to 13 men? What if we lost Daniel Carter and Richie McCaw? So you look at all the what-ifs in going forward and trying to cover all the eventualities and be able to handle them.
– 2011. What if the All Blacks lose? Will rugby no longer be the national sport? Will we give up on the game forever? You know what? Whatever happens, I'm in this for life, and that's all there is to it. I know it doesn't make sense to feel this way about a group of strangers throwing a rubber ball around on a field. How can something so meaningless feel so important? I think it's more personal than national. In the 21st century, we communicate on a global scale every day. We travel more than ever. And on a globalized planet, there's something about belonging to a tribe that still feels good. I don't know why you love your team, but I think it might be less about the people you're watching and more about the people you're watching them with. I think I was only ever looking for one feeling from my team, even if it did just last for a few minutes. They made me feel like I was home.
Come on, boys! 10 seconds. Oh my God! the rugby team the All Blacks?
No. No. The who? Absolutely. Go All Blacks.
The All Blacks? No. Is that really the name of them, the All Blacks? Nah, I never heard of it. No.
That's their name. I'm just telling you the truth, yeah.
Seriously? The All Blacks? Oh, man.
Their outfit is black. They wear...
Oh, okay.
It's because of their outfit.
Oh. That's cool. So it had nothing to do with, like, black people or nothing like that?
Not really. It's mostly because of the outfit.